Welcome back to our channel, guys. Today we're going to be reviewing the Bolt J mount for Jeep JL Wranglers and JT Gladiators. So if you're running larger tires or a lift kit on your Jeep, I'm sure that you've come to the realization that your stock jack isn't typically big enough or have enough stroke to be able to get your Jeep up off the ground high enough to change your tire out. So that's where something like a high lift jack will come into play. I know not everybody carries one of these, but if you're in any sort of off-roading situation or scenario, or you're going off the grid or out in the woods or out on the trails, I'm sure you've seen these, or you run one yourself or carry one yourself. Not only do these things have a lot of uses, they're a multi-tool. We're not going to get into all of those today, but what a lot of people do need is a way to utilize their jack and mount it in their vehicle, and that's what we're going to provide today. There's multiple ways you can mount one of these things in your Jeep. I've done different ones before in the past that I've made, and I've seen others use multiple other mounts and such. So today we're going to show you a seamless way to keep you prepared for your next adventure. To do this install, you're going to need the following tools in about an hour or so to complete it. You're going to need a 1/2 inch wrench, a 3/4 inch wrench, a couple of 3/8 drive extensions. For me, I found a swivel socket, 3/8 drive swivel socket comes in handy, a 3/8 drive ratchet wrench. I was able to use an electric impact driver, which made for the install a lot quicker. You're gonna need a T40 Torx socket, a T50 Torx socket, a 5mm Allen socket, an 8mm Allen socket, and that should do it. All right, so to start, we're gonna take our T40 and our T50 Torx bits, and we're going to remove the 4 factory A-pillar bolts. That would be these. Now, just to be clear, the J-mount can be mounted on passenger or driver's side. It doesn't matter, whichever is your preference. I am going to do this install on the passenger side, no particular reason. Something else to keep in mind is we run KC Flex Air 4 lights on the A-pillar with some mounts from KC highlights. They will not work with this mount, so we are still able to run our KC highlights off of the J mount. We'll show you guys that here in just a little bit, but just know that you won't be able to use the KC mount, or you might not be able to use other mounts with the J mount because it takes up a little bit of space around the A-pillar. With that being said, we're going to leave the KC highlights Flex Air 4 light on the driver's side and the mount over there, and we're going to remove it on the passenger side, which we've already done. Something that's going to be a little bit different in my install versus your guys's potentially is you would have 2 of these screws in the top. I've got a different screw here, so you would just remove that screw as well, just like normal with the T40 Torx bit. And let's go ahead and get it started. And while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and remove with the T50 Torx the hinge nut. Screw on top here. And once that's all removed, you can remove the A-pillar cover. Now, something else to keep in mind, I'm running a stubby antenna. If you have the stock factory antenna, they say that you may need to remove the antenna. So if it ends up being an issue with it interfering, just remove your antenna from the base, and you'll end up being able to reconnect it after. I was able to leave mine in place because it's short enough and it didn't cause any issues. So just keep that in mind. Now for the next step, we've already done this install to make sure that it does indeed work, that we do enjoy it and we do like it, and we checked all those boxes. So what I'm getting at is we've already removed the gaskets from the kit. So you're going to take this little key looking gasket here, remove that, and you're going to place it behind the A-pillar towards the rear screw. So that's what this gasket right here is. So just press that on behind the screw or behind the nut there, and you'll be good to go. After that, we can go ahead and reinstall the A-pillar cover. All right, for the next step, we're gonna assemble one of the braces to the jack mount itself. We're gonna do that in 3 places. We're gonna use the 20mm screws, 3 of them, 3 of the washers, and the 3 lock nuts. I'll show you how we do that. So depending on the side that you're gonna put this on your Jeep, will determine which way you put the bracket on. So for me, this is going to be going to the front of the Jeep. So if you're going passenger, it gets put on this way. If you're going driver, you have to flip it and it goes this way. And you'll see why. It's a symmetrical bracket, but you have to put it on in the correct orientation. So essentially, this bracket just slides over top like that. There's a little slot in the brace that these threaded Boss extruded pieces stick out from, and that will kind of help locate it. And we're going to go ahead and place 2 bolts here on the side, and then we're going to place 1 here in the middle. Now once you have them placed, you can take the lock nuts, thread them into position. Now these require 1/2-inch wrench and a 5mm Allen socket. All right, and that's what it should look like when you're done. Now the next step would be to take the gaskets that you have here and you would place them over top of the threads on the J-mount bracket. But like I said, we've already done this install, so we already went ahead and did that. All right, so the next step, we're gonna take the locking pin and we're going to insert it into the bracket like so. And this is going to take the 1/2-inch wrench and a 3/4-inch wrench. Once you get the locking pin through and the threads are showing, you can take the panel nut, thread it onto the locking pin, get it tight. The back side will accept your 1/2-inch wrench, and then the front side will take your 3/4-inch wrench. Now the next step is, it's a little tricky, to be honest, in my opinion. We're gonna take this barrel nut that goes on the hinge, and we're gonna be assembling it. We're gonna be assembling the actual J-mount to the Jeep now, kind of temporarily, not fully. This is where the swivel mount and your extensions come into play. I wasn't able to use my impact because it doesn't fit. Ultimately, what we're gonna be doing is the holes here on the back side, I'll highlight those now. Those, you're going to be using the rearmost hole to put this barrel nut into. How you access it is through that opening right here. I'll highlight that. So you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see the holes there. So that's how we're going to get into the barrel nut. So it's just a little bit tricky, just not getting it bound up. It's honestly easier if you just go ahead and kind of start it by hand. Okay, so now that we have the J-mount partially installed on the Jeep, we're ready for the next step, which is to take the little spacer gaskets and we're going to install them on 2 of the spacers. We've already done this, so you'll just peel and stick them on there like that. And then once we have that, we're going to go ahead and place them on the A-pillar. So you'll take the gasket side, put it against the Jeep. So you'll lift the bracket out of the way a bit, feed your spacer down in there, and then it should sit down inside the hole of the A-pillar. We'll do it to the other side as well. Okay. Now that those are on, we're going to grab our screws. Now, this is something to keep in mind. You have 2 different screws here. You've got one you'll see that has this little pinhole and one that does not. The one that has the pinhole is going to go to the front of the Jeep. So I'll point to that hole now so you can see it. You're going to do, the one with the hole is going to go in the front. The other one will go in the rear. And the reason for that is they give us this little cotter pin here that will go inside the hole as a, they're calling this screw the security screw. So we're gonna go ahead and get those installed, and then I'll show you the cotter pin. Oh, by the way, these use the lock washers, not the regular washers. So let's get it installed. I'm gonna start these by hand. Make sure I get everything lined up so I'm not cross-threading anything. And we'll do the same for the front. Remember, the one with the cotter pin hole goes to the front. Now these take the 5mm Allen. So now that that is done, we can go ahead and we need to open the hood. Now that the hood is open, it exposes this little gap here. I'll try and zoom in so you can see the screw. If the screw isn't in a good position for you to put the pin in, either loosen or tighten the screw to be able to get it in, and then you can go ahead and put the pin in, and then you can retighten it or loosen it as needed. Now the pin's through the screw, and we're good to go. So now we can go ahead and close the hood. Okay, so our next step is going to be using that 8mm with the swivel and the extensions. We're gonna feed that in there. Tighten that down by hand. And just like that, we have our J-mount all installed. Sorry for the interruption, guys, but before we install the high lift jack to the J-mount, I need to say a big thank you to the sponsor of this video, Bolt Lock. If you're unfamiliar with their products, I'm sure most of you watching, you'd be really surprised to find out that they offer a lot of locking products that you could either use or maybe you do already use. For example, they offer hitch receiver locks, coupler pin locks, hood locks, padlocks, and much more. Like I mentioned before, the greatest part of their locks is that they use your vehicle's factory key. So there's no need anymore to fumble around with a bunch of key rings just trying to find the correct lock. Now, although they sent us these products, stick around for the end of the video so we can show you guys just how much we love their mount and their locks. You'll get to see them actually being used for what they're meant for. So thank you again to Bolt Lock for sponsoring this video. All right, we're finally here. We can get the high lift jack installed to the J-mount, and it's really easy. Just simply lift your jack up onto the J-mount at your desired height. There is no right or wrong position. Me personally, I don't want mine sitting up super high just because I don't want the jack to be catching on unnecessary branches or anything that it doesn't need to, but at the same time I don't want it super low to where the little leg, the foot here, is getting into my fender or anything. So there are four holes here. There's 2 sets for the top and 2 sets for the bottom. So I prefer to just use the top for the top hole. Thread your thumb screws in, and then I use the bottom hole for the bottom set. All right, now it's installed. We got one last step here. So what's great and makes the J-mount so awesome is that they use the bolt locks. If you're unfamiliar with the bolt locks, they use your Jeep key. So I've got my Jeep key right here. As you know, it's the world's biggest key. Essentially, when you first do this bolt lock, it will need to be coated, and it will have a little piece of tape over top of it telling you, hey, this needs coated to your key. Mine's already been done, but basically you'll push it in, and if I'm not mistaken, you twist it 3 times, and then it codes to that key. So then you can push it in, pull it out. So now that it's already coated, I don't really need my key at all. I can just take the bolt lock, push it on, put the cap on, and we're installed. Okay, so just as easy as it was to put it on, it's just as easy to take off. So you would take your Jeep key, undo the cover, you push your key in, rotate it clockwise, and it pulls off. These things are brilliant. And then you would just unscrew your thumb screws and you can take your jack off. It's just as easy as that. All right, just like that, we've got our KC Flex Air 4 mount, or KC Flex Air 4 lights back installed on the J mount. So we can go ahead and plug that back in and off we go. All right guys, hopefully this video was informative for you. You can check out the J mount by Bolt Lock on their website. I'll put a link to their website for this specific mount in the description below, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. And let us know what you think in the comments about this mount, if you think that you would use it or what you would use it for, and what accessories you might mount to it, and if you guys think that's something that you guys could use. All right, we'll catch you guys in the next video. See ya.